Grove from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't like what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
I believe you are quite aware the situation has changed since last we spoke.
The truth is still the truth, and a bargain is still a bargain.
And Mayor Cermak is now deceased.
Yes. What does that have to do with our contract?
I do not recall signing a contract with you, Mr. Heller.
We had a verbal agreement. I'm sure my uncle here will attest to that.
Nathan, please. You're being most rude.
But Dawes reacted just as I knew he would.
Lewis, as a family man, I quite understand your position. As for you, young Mr. Heller, you should not have spoken to the papers of this. It was a breach of confidence.
Nothing was said of our arrangement being a confidential one. Besides which, I was in fact discreet.
How so?
I didn't tell the reporters why I was offered the job at the fair. Void our deal, sir, and I'm going to be put into an embarrassing light. I will have to inform the press of your involvement.
This reeks of blackmail, young man.
It reeks of business. Our arrangement is binding in my view, and if you feel differently, I'll be noisy about it.
Nathan.
I'm not a big wheel like you, General, but us little wheels can get good and goddamn squeaky when we don't get our grease.
My secretary will have contracts ready for you to sign this afternoon at 4. Please return and sign them. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your collecting friend, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, the never-to-be-defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's, of course, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm, of course, Rob casting at you right here from the Rob Observatory. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Rob Observations, episode number 1025. I want to get something clear. That trailer that I posted for the movie White Devils is a film I was a producer on, micro-budget horror, thriller, familial horror, generational horror, and all rights are available. You know, we're looking for distribution. It's we just had it out. We're sending it out to places, and hopefully people will see it. Also, for those who are interested, True Noir is completed. You can get all 10 episodes of the audio drama now at truenoir.co. I just finished sequencing the soundtrack CD today. It's 35 tracks. Woo! It's going to be 2 CDs. So if you were supporters of that, you'll be getting one of those. Also, we will have some to sell if you're interested after hearing the audio drama and you love the score, which I do. The score, I think, is incredible. Alexander Bornstein did a great job. He did a phenomenal job. So, really happy that that is finished. We'll see what will come of that next. And maybe we'll have announcements of the future of True Noir. And there will be a future, mark my words. But right now, we're not going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about the present. And you know, for if you've listened to this channel for any length of time, and you listen to me opine about cinema and what I love about cinema, what I love about storytelling, the thing that I'm looking for most of all is authorship. I want to know that when I sit down and read something or watch something, I go into a movie theater, cinema, I want to know that there's real thought and real craft that went behind what I'm going to see. Now, there are times when I might not have thought something was as great as it could be, but I like it and respect it anyway because of the clear craftsmanship or craftspersonship that was put into it. I cast a wide net when it comes to things that I love. But, I've got to say, I've got to give it up for Ryan Coogler's Sinners, because people are talking about, well, it's a slow burn horror film. I don't think it's so much a horror movie as it is a film about America and a film about our world today. I mean, I think the greatest movies are both specific, but they speak to the greater truths of humanity. I mean, I look at The Exorcist, and I think it has a lot more to say than just about the soul of a possessed girl or a priest who's lost his faith. There's a lot going on in all of our great movies. The Godfather is not just a mobster movie, for instance. And I think that Sinners is, first of all, a great film. It's a great vision. It is a great example of authorship. It is an example of incredible craftsmanship on every level. But truly, Ryan Coogler, as an auteur, as the writer and director of this film, he's addressing so many issues. I mean, you could call it a horror movie. You could call it a movie about trauma. You could call it a movie about the blues. You could call it a movie about the spiritual power of music. Call it what you want. It is all of those things. And while it is not everyone's cup of tea, to me, what it represents is a shining beacon toward the future of what the entertainment business could be. Now, I had seen Fruitvale Station, his first film, when it first came out. Impressive piece of work, impressive bit of indie cinema about a real event, dramatizing a very sad event. And that was the first collaboration between Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler. And it was interesting. Audaciously, he used that as an opportunity to get an audience with Sly Stallone and convinced him to make Creed. And one of the things that I have been, that I've been talking about since Creed came out is, if you want to look to what to do with a moribund IP or an IP that needs a direction, you've got to find a filmmaker like Ryan Coogler. Him and his father were watching Rocky movies when his mother was ill, and they were bonding over Rocky films. And Ryan Coogler had the idea. Actually, I got to tell you a funny story. So Ryan Coogler had the idea, went to Sly Stallone, convinced him to let him make Creed, and put Rocky in the secondary position to Adonis Creed. So convinced Sylvester Stallone to take a supporting role. Now, that supporting role led to an Academy Award nomination. But the funny thing so if you look at the new episode of Designing Hollywood, Ruth Carter, the Academy Award-winning Ruth Carter, who was the costume designer on both Black Panther and Wakanda Forever and did the amazing costumes for Sinners, told me a funny story. She said that when Ryan Coogler finished Creed and showed it to his father for the first time, as Ruth put it, he said, "It's all right," which I thought was hysterical. Because he loves the original Rocky movies. I understand. I get it. So look, here's the thing about Sinners. It is a very transportive experience. Now, I've only seen it. I need to go see it I want to see it in 70 millimeter. They're screening it in true on 70 millimeter film. Obviously, if you watch the Kodak video that they put up online, where Ryan Coogler takes you through all the formats, a lot of thought was put into this. And what's really interesting to me about the film is you have a studio. Like, I consider Warner Brothers my home studio, because when I was a young whippersnapper, my first regular job in the business, as people know, I was a management trainee. I worked under Bill Young, the senior vice president of production at Warner Brothers for a few years, a long time ago. And then, of course, I went back and worked on Superman Returns for 2 years, and I worked for their global brand management division in addition to home video, making a lot of promotional partnership videos and things like that. Then I went back to Warner Brothers and I produced The Hills Run Red back in 2008. Dave Parker and I went and made that for Dark Castle Entertainment when Joel Silver was still on the lot. And then we made Blu-rays for that back in 2020 during the pandemic. So I've had a long history with Warner Brothers and worked there a lot. So I was very excited to see Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi take over the studio. And what they are trying to do is what I think Hollywood should do, which is forge relationships with talent and be talent focused. Now they've had a rough go of it. And all the talk in the town last month was that Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi's reign at the studio might be short-lived because they had a lot of disappointments. Well, they hosted their CinemaCon panel in Vegas, both the two of them, and some people saw that as being in bad taste. But coming out of the gate now, they have it might be either 2-1 or 1-2 movies at the box office. Minecraft passed $300 million domestic this weekend. Sinners made $26 million on Friday, and $20 million domestic takes $6 million international. We'll see where it goes. But the idea that you have leaders at studios, and interestingly enough, as a person who has loved Warner Brothers, and of course George Feltenstein, who's the guru of physical media, the man, as I've said, they should make him the national film czar. He, of course, runs Warner Archive. They had a huge success. Warner Archive had a huge success with their Searchers, the John Wayne film, the John Ford directed film. The Searchers came out in a beautiful, brand new, restored edition, and they had a big success with that. It was in the top 10 films for a while, and that was selling. And even physical media is not as dead as people might think it is. So you've got a lot of really great people at Warner Brothers that should be allowed to cook. Let them cook. And they've got a pretty great slate coming up. Of course, James Gunn's Superman is on the horizon. We'll see what happens. I like to live in a world where studios are making great movies that I love. Movies that are innovative. They're not just chasing IP dollars. Warner Brothers also has New Line under their umbrella. And people like Roy Lee were able to facilitate a movie like Companion getting made. Now, I think there's been a lot of talk this year that the box office is way down. Look, I think the box office is way down because everybody who's marketing movies needs to go back to school or pay attention to what's happening in the modern age, because a movie like Companion could have had a really innovative marketing campaign. That movie should have made $50 million. Companion's now streaming on VOD. That was a New Line film. It felt like a New Line film you might have seen in 1987 or 88 when they were in the midst of making movies like the Nightmare on Elm Street films and movies like Jack Shoulder's The Hidden. New Line was doing a lot of great genre stuff. Companion was a great banger of a film. Now, I'm not saying Companion is Inception, but I'm saying for a $10 million, essentially a B genre programmer, it was really good. It delivered the goods. It was clever. It was a great time out at the films. When I was seeing it on the cinema screen, the 5 of us in the theater had a great time. Now, if people knew that it was that great of a time, I think that there would have been more people in the theater, but nobody knew it was even out. So the thing about Sinners is, if you watch the the World Wide Web, there's a lot of talk and a lot of chatter and a lot of people who are having an experience in the theater, which is what movies are all about. You want to have a great experience in the theater. Sinners gives that to you if you're open to it. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but the musical component, one of the things that I was talking to Ruth Carter about was I'm a huge fan of Spielberg's The Color Purple. And that was another film that had surrounded a juke joint. And there's a couple of great scenes when Margaret Avery sings Sister. And of course, that also had the great Quincy Jones did the score, not John Williams, but Quincy Jones did the score for The Color Purple, which is amazing. And Ruth and I were talking about, Ruth brought up the scene where Shug Avery leaves the juke joint and brings all the musicians into the church where her father is. And I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Now, this is not the recent musical version that Oprah Winfrey produced. This is the Spielberg original that probably wouldn't have been made today because people would have said, Steven Spielberg shouldn't make The Color Purple. But whatever, it's a great film. And it also has a juke joint at its center the same way that Sinners does. But anyway, Sinners provides an experience. And if you're in a theater with a bunch of people, you're collectively having this experience. And I think it's very apparent to everybody who goes into the theater and sees it in whatever, see it in the biggest format you can because the photography is amazing. But this is what cinema should be. It shouldn't just be a place where you go in, you sit down, you have your popcorn, and you watch Super Mario Brothers. Not that there's anything wrong with Super Mario Brothers, but Super Mario Brothers does not transcend what it is. You go in and you watch a movie, and it was good. It was well done. I mean, don't get me wrong, making an animated Super Mario Brothers movie is not an easy thing to do. But the thing about Sinners is creeping into your soul. It's getting into your intellect. It's peeking around there, and it's making you think, but at the same time, it's wildly entertaining, and it's immersing you. I mean, that film drips with atmosphere. It is so lush. There's something going on in all over the frame. The cinematography is just insane. By the way, RYAN Coogler has only ever worked with female cinematographers. So there you go. What a wonderful piece of work Sinners is. Now, do I think it's perfect? Certainly not. I'm not going to sit here and say this was the greatest movie ever made. But it certainly was an experience. And it's the kind of experience that I've been craving and I've been experiencing since I was 5 years old, really, and fell in love with film. And so what I see is I see a filmmaker in RYAN Coogler. Now he's talking about rebooting the X-Files somehow. Bring it on. He did something very smart. He made his bones in indie cinema doing Fruitvale Station. He used that and got himself, he made, the sixth sequel to Rocky? Was Creed the sixth sequel? Now there's Creed 1, 2, and 3. And then, of course, he makes a gigantic movie in Black Panther, $1 billion, loses his star tragically, makes Wakanda Forever that also comes close to $1 billion. Does he jump into another IP? No. He takes his clout and he uses it to make something incredibly personal to him. Now, sure, it wasn't cheap, but, when you're coming off of a $2 billion franchise that you've basically shepherded, a studio's happy to have you. But what it says about Warner Brothers is the studio always forged relationships with filmmakers. Clint Eastwood famously, Stanley Kubrick, Joel Silver, and Richard Donner had their little donut of offices that were right across from each other, a little courtyard, but I guess it was an oval donut. Call it what you want. But they specialized in that, and then the business started to change. But in order to survive, the film business has to provide the kinds of experiences. Movies have to be experiences again. You can't just walk in and mindlessly watch something. They've got to be transformative. And the only way to make movies truly transformative is if you have the talent behind them that has something to say. You need great talent. And, while I would say that Companion maybe wasn't, it was a little movie, I got Zach Kreger and his little group there, and Companion was made by a friend of his, and producers like Roy Lee that, are finding these scripts, Weapons, Companion. Roy's got The Long Walk coming out as well, and How to Train Your Dragon. You need producers and you need filmmakers that are truly interested in providing the experiences cinema goers crave. And I think part of the reason that streaming has been taking everyone's attention because, one, the long form storytelling, it can give you that kind of experience, but not the kind of experience that Sinners provides. There is still the model, that 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 90-minute, that burst of, it gets into your soul, man. And when you're sitting in that, especially in large formats, you truly feel something. More so than you're ever going to feel at home. You're in that sensory deprivation tank of a movie theater. Hopefully, movies like Sinners will cause people that have no attention span, that are these dopamine-addicted Gen Z kids that can't get off their TikTok, they even get off their TikTok to watch movies like Sinners. Because when you're provided that experience, people don't want to pay attention to anything else. They're getting they're getting the power of cinema. And we have a generation of kids that haven't been brought up with that power. It's only been there sporadically, but when we can provide more of it, people are going to go to that experience because people want experiences. That's what they want. They want to feel, man. They want to feel something. And you go to that theater and you're going to feel something when you see Sinners, especially if the projection's great, the sound is great. Listen to this movie loud. The music's incredible. But a few interesting things about RYAN Coogler from a business perspective that I think is very smart. Now, I've often said that pop culture, I say one of my Burnett axioms is that pop culture has a half-life of 20 years. Most things don't last longer than 20 years. And if you look at what Hollywood is doing with their libraries, the studios, if they have films that are 25 years old or older, unless there's something like Jaws or Star Wars, they don't even care. Paramount's licensed out half of its library to whatever home video company, whatever boutique label, if it's Vinegar Syndrome, if it's Kino Lorber, go take our movies. Even like Zeitgeist films like Indecent Proposal, Kino Lorber put out in 4K, and God bless him. I mean, I'm not saying that's a great example of a great movie, but I'm saying that in this day and age, if a movie's 20 years old, what's a studio going to do with it? Well, aside from turn a movie into an 8-episode series, kind of like Presumed Innocent, great movie, great cast, Brian Dennehy, Raul Julia, Greta Scacchi, Harrison Ford, and what happens? David Kelly comes along and turns it into an 8-episode series with Jake Gyllenhaal, and nobody remembers Presumed Innocent was based on a best-selling novel and had a great John Williams score. But that's where we're at. So keep that in mind when I read you this article, because I'm going to read you a couple articles. I did link them down into the description. The tip link is down there too if you want to interact with me that way. Super chats or tips. But let me start. Hang on. I'm still getting over whatever crud I had for 3 weeks, so I apologize for that. So, let me start with this article because I think it's interesting and certainly worth talking about. Now, this article comes to us from The Hollywood Reporter, and it was published yesterday at noon. And I found this very interesting and very exciting at the same time. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Hang on, let me just move this up so I can actually read it. RYAN Coogler and his proximity banner are playing the long game. After establishing itself with projects like Judas and the Black Messiah, Proximity Media takes its biggest swing to date on Sinners, producing the original supernatural period film in record time, at least by studio standards. The time it takes to produce a feature film can span studio heads, a pivot to streaming, and a merger or two. As original movies take longer and longer to work their way through the studio machinery, the pace of change at studios from strategies and shifting priorities has sped up. Even the most veteran filmmakers have been entrapped in that antagonistic push-pull. Yes, and this is why the studios are having such a hard time. This is the problem with Hollywood. Sinners, the latest from filmmaker RYAN Coogler, landed at Warner Brothers at the top of 2024. A year and some change later, it's hitting theaters this weekend. By the way, that's what should happen. As an aside, I was a producer of the Agent Cody Banks franchise. We sold Agent Cody Banks to the studio, to MGM, in February of 2002. We were filming that movie in May of 2002. 3 months later. That doesn't really happen, but it should. As for how Coogler ended up anomalously pushing the movie through a post-pandemic, post-strike entertainment industry in what amounts to land speed record timing, that's a longer story. Coogler's path from Sundance Film Festival wonderkind to seasoned blockbuster filmmaker is well known. In a sentence, the indie debut Fruitvale Station led to a shot as resuscitating a dormant franchise with 2015's Creed, that then begat his own $2 billion grossing Marvel Studios franchise, Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Lesser known is his work as a producer under his Proximity Media banner, which he founded with Zev Owanian and Zinzi Coogler, his wife. We met when we were 13 or 14. When you're in a relationship with someone for that long, you pull each other into each other's lives, Zinzi recently told The Hollywood Reporter. Zinzi worked as an ASL, American Sign Language, interpreter at a deaf advocacy nonprofit in the Coogler's native Bay Area, while helping whenever she could on student films and eventually Fruitvale. A well-worn anecdote is that Zinzi was the one who first brought Coogler the screenwriting software Final Draft to help him pursue his filmmaking career. While continuing to work as an interpreter on film sets like A Wrinkle in Time, Zinzi observed and advised Coogler, whom she married in 2016, on his projects as the sound stages and budgets got progressively bigger. Zinzi says with a laugh, he would often invite me into the most inappropriate meetings and places, from being in all of his classes at school, to being on sets, to being in rooms when he's making deals with studio heads. Coogler notes that many filmmakers he admires have worked with their significant others. I remember having a meeting with Zack Snyder at one point, and his wife, Deborah Snyder, was there running his stuff. And I had a meeting with J.J. Abrams, and his wife, Katie McGrath, was there running their stuff, says Coogler. And I was like, oh no, I'm doing this shit completely wrong. Then we met Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas in 2015. When we went to go down to meet with them, that's when I started hard selling Zinzi. As for Owanian, he first met Coogler as students at the University of Southern California's lauded film program, eventually crashing on the Coogler's couch as he produced Fruitvale. After being separated for several subsequent projects while in post on Black Panther, the Cooglers attended the San Francisco premiere of Owanian's 2018 feature, Searching. Over dinner at a Peruvian restaurant on the waterfront, the trio decided to join forces for Proximity Media. Now in its 7th year, Proximity's work has since spanned TV, Marvel's upcoming Wakanda Forever spinoff Ironheart, and nonfiction, Steph Curry Underrated, as well as award winners with 2021's Judas and the Black Messiah, netting 2 Oscars. With the pandemic and the strikes, we could feel a gap where we could make something for people that is surprising. When things get as shitty as they've been, the natural response for a Fortune 500 corporation is to mitigate all the risk. I could feel the safe, stable movies coming, said Coogler. From a business standpoint, I totally understand. But from an audience standpoint, it bums me the fuck out. Amen, sir. It was at this point, with industry instability at its highest it's been since he began his filmmaking career, that Coogler began writing his blues-centric supernatural period piece set in a juke joint, the Jim Crow South, that is beset upon by vampires. And let me tell you, this is when you do one for them and one for you, and this is the one for you. Christopher Nolan doing Inception, doing Dunkirk. I mean, that's what great filmmakers do. One for you, one for them. And if you're a great filmmaker, you're able to get away with it. I felt the clock was ticking on us in terms of being able to give ourselves completely to a project like this, says Coogler. The Proximity partners and their close collaborators' lives outside of work were becoming more involved. There were now kids and other priorities. Some of us have minivans now. It had been over a decade, but it felt like the jump from film school students to in-demand talent booked out years in advance had crept up on them. I didn't want to look up and be 50 and not have made this, reasoned the director. I only got so long before Kevin Feige calling me like, hey, what's up? I wish that would happen to me. So at the top of last year, Proximity took Sinners to market. An offer was a successful, reliable filmmaker with his first original spec since his standout debut, and the producers weren't just coming to the table with a draft, but a ready-made team of past collaborators. Ruth Carter, the famed costume designer who won an Oscar for her work on Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, was already on board, as was cinematographer Autumn Arkapaw, who shot Wakanda Forever. And, of course, Michael B. Jordan was attached to star, as twins, no less. Now, you could say, oh, it's much easier to get a movie made when you have these people, but that's why you collaborate with the same people. When you're spending this much money, you have to work with people that you know and trust. And you're coming off of a great collaboration in Wakanda Forever. Why mess things up? Ludwig Göransson, the Academy Award-winning composer and Proximity co-founder, was ideating the film's music before the screenplay was done. By the way, the music and what he came up with is astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. If nothing else, what Ludwig Göransson did with the music in this film and all the musicians, he did the same thing. He found he collaborated with African musicians on Black Panther. I went and saw the live John Campea took me to see the Black Panther live with a live orchestra and Ludwig Göransson there. It was incredible. The musical identity of this movie I can't tell you how much it added to the experience. And again, this is his partner, Ryan Coogler's partner in his production company, and the guy who composes music for his movies. I mean, not everybody can have that, but that's the direction Hollywood needs to go in if it's going to provide the experience. It's this collaboration with filmmakers that's what makes filmmaking work. Unfortunately, it's very hard to find that. Not everybody can do that. It's very rare, and I recognize that too. If it were easy, everybody would do it. But this is the direction Hollywood, the theatrical movie-making industry, needs to go to provide the kind of experiences. You know, before, when movies were being challenged by television in the 50s, they got bigger. You got VistaVision, you got Panavision, you got CinemaScope. You know, you got all of these things because you had to make something bigger than television. Well, now, in this day and age where our attention spans are lacking and you've got video games and you've got user-generated content, what the movies have to do is what they did in the 50s. Instead of getting bigger, they have to get more experiential. They have to get more intellectual. They have to get more romantic. They have to get more horrific. They have to provide an experience that we are numb to in our daily lives. And that's what Hollywood used to be very good at doing. It's just that was par for the course. Hollywood's gotten away from that. Hollywood needs to now start making, not just tugging at your heartstrings, but scrambling your brain, terrifying you, making you fall in love, all of these things. That's why we need passionate auteur filmmakers to provide those experiences. And they don't have to cost $200 million. We all knew that Ryan was writing scenes with music, and Zev and Zinzi were like, okay, we want to shoot this as soon as possible. Is it possible to have the song ready in 3 months? Normally, probably not. Making original music involves writing and composing the songs and teaching them to on-screen talent. But says Göransson, because we do have a rapport with each other, I was like, don't worry, we'll just figure it out. The request to the studio was simple, if not daunting. Says Coogler, we're happy to make it with any of you guys, but we've got to go now. I love having that clout. For a successful filmmaker or talent starting a production company, the supposed next step is usually to find a home base with a studio deal. Proximity notably has maintained its free agent status, not signing an overall deal in film. In TV, the studio has a pact with 20th Century. Going all the way back to Fruitvale, we were so young and there wasn't a day on that movie where somebody wouldn't, out of kindness, say, hey, this is actually not how things are usually done. Says Oanian, if we're not doing something industry standard, maybe we're finding a different way to do it, and it might just be as good. Coogler adds that if he had an overall deal, Sinners would not have come to fruition so quickly. We have a competitive market, Coogler says. A lot of folks wanted to make this movie, thankfully, and that's what enabled us to have the timeline as one of the deal points. In addition to the truncated timeline, another deal point was ownership. Coogler would reclaim the rights to his film after 25 years. That means it comes back to him. Quentin Tarantino struck a deal with Sony for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that sees his ownership stake in the movie increase every year for 20 years, when then the movie reverts to him. And you know what? People might think that's crazy, but in this day and age, what is a studio going to do with a 20-year-old or 25-year-old film if it isn't Star Wars, if it isn't Jaws, if it isn't a Disney animated classic? That's why it was a smart thing to do. The filmmaker has talked about the deal being a one-off for Sinners, a film centered on a story about black ownership. And if nothing else, over $2 billion in ticket sales for his movies is a solid proof of concept. Studios and streamers descended on the offices of William Morris, where hopeful bidders were required to travel if they wanted to hear the pitch and read the script. Maybe the greatest testament of Coogler and Company is that they were able to get studio executives to willfully drive into Beverly Hills midweek. In the end, Warner Brothers won out over fellow finalist Universal. 4 months after the first draft hit Zinzi and away with a budget of $90 million. Multiple reports, including those in Hollywood Reporter, placed the final budget higher. Heading into theaters this weekend, Sinners has already paid off, at least critically. It has bowed to universal praise from critics, with near-perfect scores across review aggregators, with the Hollywood Reporter saying Sinners has enough thematic layers and genre fluidity to fuel at least 3 movies. And while Sinners is a big swing for proximity, it also has implications for the industry at large. The movie is seen as a bellwether for the tenure of Warner Brothers film chiefs Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca, who have incurred the awe and ire of Hollywood by building a slate of big-budget features from big-name talent. It also comes in a year where original stories, movies not based on IP or a part of a pre-existing franchise, are failing to get audiences into theaters. But if Sinners hits, it will be far from the first time Coogler and his producers have defied the odds. Says Zinzi, knowing that Ryan's tenacity and the way he works, there was a trust in him that he would deliver on this impossible task. And that's how he got here. It wasn't by accident. So to me, obviously you have a confluence of talent that not everybody, very few people have. But what you're looking for is to find that talent. And you know what? My problem that I've seen with the industry, and admittedly, I work on the fringes at the lowest level. I'm an indie producer. I've always been an indie guy. Cody Banks was the first time, although I did get a single card credit in the main titles. I'm just saying, I'm the only producer that has a single card credit. Remember, kids, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiated. And that's what came out of negotiation, and a decent paycheck, too. But, boy, I don't ever want to be responsible for Agent Cody Banks 2, Destination London. That's what happens when you lose control. But I just want to say that this is the kind of thing that makes Hollywood work. Why are you waiting around? The problem is everybody's waiting around because nobody knows what they want to do. This was a package that was easy for a corporation to pull a trigger on because of the talent involved. But you know what? I would say that doesn't necessarily mean a movie's going to succeed. We have to see the marketing departments across the board step it up. I mean, at CinemaCon this year, we saw some really impressive presentations. My favorite presentation, quite frankly, was Amazon. What does Amazon have? What they have what Warner Brothers had, or what Warner Brothers had. You have Courtney Valenti and Sue Kroll. You want somebody that knows about marketing? Sue Kroll at Amazon knows marketing, and their slate is really, really impressive. I'm getting another Don Winslow movie. One of my favorite authors of modern noir, Crime 101. Wait till you see the banger of a trailer they have out for that. That looks terrific. And of course, Project Hail Mary, my most eagerly awaited film of 2026. After reading Andy Weir's book and what they showed us at CinemaCon, has me hella excited, as the kids say. Can't wait. But this is the way things should be done. You put together great talent, you let them cook. So, kudos to Ryan Coogler. And I hope, for everybody's sake, I mean, good on Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca, who, by the way, I met for the very first time when I was a PA on my first job. Well, we talked at like 3 o'clock in the morning on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. That was a mistake, though. They were never going to make that into a franchise. They keep trying, but just not the thing. Anyway, if you go see Sinners, you'll understand. You'll feel the experience. Now, look, if you don't like it, that's okay, too. It really is. Not everybody's going to like everything. So, let's see. There's some people that have been chiming in. I want to see what they're going to say. 1001 Johnny says, a film may not be the best, but the worldview is very apparent. Well, we've talked about worldview a lot on this channel as well. I think, look, you need a combination. This movie is full of worldview and world building, in addition to having a great, compelling story. DUI Champ says, hey, Rob, I'm flying out to the West Coast in August for the first time. I heard there's a sci-fi museum opening soon in Santa Monica. Know anything about it? There was a sci-fi museum opening in Santa Monica. It turned out to be a monumental debacle, and it closed. It never really reached, unfortunately, fruition. The people that were trying to do it mishandled it. But I don't know when it is opening. The Lucasfilm Museum, that's where you want to go. I don't know when it opens, but it looks to be amazing. Definitely a destination attraction here in Southern California. So look into that. And also the Academy Museum, the Motion Picture Academy Museum is opening. But I think you might have to get tickets in advance for it. Definitely another thing you cannot miss. Major Chai Chai says, I hope Sinners sparks a modern renaissance and rediscovery of Delta blues like Swing had a resurgence about 20 years ago. Swing because of movies like Swingers. Movies, one of the interesting things about film, especially like in the 80s, music and movies were sort of intertwined. Like I've always spoken about when Tony Scott had Bauhaus playing Bela Lugosi's Dead at the beginning of his 1983 feature debut, The Hunger. And John Hughes made great use of music. A lot of Brit bands coming out. The first time I heard Sieg Sieg Sputnik was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So, of course, that might not have been such a great thing. But hey, they used, speaking of Bauhaus, he used Haunted When the Minutes Drag from Love and Rockets, and she's having a baby. We don't sort of have that anymore because pop culture has changed. But with all the reaction channels, I would expect a spate of people going back and rediscovering Delta blues. And I was talking about it earlier today. Adventures in Babysitting. No one gets out of here without singing the blues. Remember that? I love that. So maybe I'm sure people are going to go meme that now because I'm surprised that I always loved that when I saw that film. I don't own Adventures in Babysitting. I should probably. Was it suppressed because of Thor? I don't know. Paul Allan Bernardo says, hi, Rob. I couldn't wait until Tuesday to see Sinners, so I saw it today. Though it's very well produced, beautifully shot, I have issues with the script. Well, that's okay. You can have issues with the script, but and that's fair. But I still think, again, it's an experience. Definitely an experience. I'm sure it's not for everyone. And by the way, if you are a fan of blues or jazz music, I was talking to Ruth Carter about this. Check out Bertrand Tavernier's Round Midnight. I think it's a wonderful movie that really, it's a movie about blues. It's about people who love blues. It's about people who play the blues. Dexter Gordon plays a thinly veiled version of himself in the film. So check that out if you are interested. Now, I've got a second article I want to read that it's from the AV Club, and it delves into Ryan Coogler's deal for Sinners and why it has some people not so jazzed on it, but I wanted to delve into that as well. So this comes to us from the AV Club, and it was written by William Hughes. Also, this article came out last night on the AV Club. Coogler gets back ownership of the Michael B. Jordan film in 2050, which feels like it's at least 20 other Hollywood apocalypses from now. We can't imagine it takes much to make a movie studio executive nervous these days. The box office is still sluggish in the wake of the COVID-19 lockdowns. Not even superhero movies can act as guaranteed slam dunks. And you know that smug bastard Seth Rogen is out there somewhere just waiting to turn your latest public fiasco into a TV show. No wonder the Hollywood elite are so skittish that something as interesting as Ryan Coogler's recent deal for his Southern Vampires movie Sinners has some of them screaming Hollywood apocalypse. This is per a recent deep dive from Vulture, which not only explored the terms of Coogler's unorthodox deal, but also found some anonymous Hollywood types willing to call it very dangerous, as well as to say it could be the end of the studio system, which was certainly a real boon to the headline writers. We kid because it's a genuinely good examination of the issue, but some of the panic definitely feels a little overblown. It's like this. Coogler, who is fresh off a very serious run of hits, including Creed, which also spawned 2 sequels, and 2 Black Panthers, when he was shopping the Michael B. Jordan project around, had a number of requirements when he looked to hammer out a deal for Sinners with studios. Some of these were big asks, but not outside the realm of possibility for a guy currently writing a series of major box office wins. Final cut of the movie and first dollar gross. That is, Coogler starts getting a portion of the film's profits from the moment it opens in theaters, rather than having to wait for the studio to make back its money. The really biggie, though, was one that more than one studio reportedly balked at. Coogler wanted ownership of the film to revert to him after 25 years. This is unorthodox, to say the least. Hollywood studios derive a ton of their value from the vast libraries of films they own, so losing even one, and all of its attendant potentials for licensing, sequels, redistribution, etc., is usually pretty unthinkable. It usually only happens when a director takes huge risks, like self-financing a movie. Mel Gibson owns The Passion of the Christ, for instance, while Richard Linklater has partial ownership of Boyhood. Quentin Tarantino, meanwhile, will get ownership of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood back in a couple of decades, essentially as a continuation of old deals he used to have with Miramax from the days when the whole studio was basically resting on his back. Coogler scoring a rights reversion on what's his only 5th movie is an outlier, one that's as much a reflection of how much Warner Brothers Pictures has been floundering in recent years as Coogler's own rising star status. Accepting a current Minecraft-shaped like raft, which has at least a chance in its 3rd week of eclipsing Sinners when it premieres at the box office this weekend, the studio has been taking it on the teeth ever since at least the start of COVID. No studio weathered that storm in perfect condition, but Warner Brothers wound up blowing up not just its finances, but its reputation, alienating creators with its decision to put movies on VOD and streaming alongside their theatrical release. The studio is still smarting from losing Christopher Nolan over this, so studio heads Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca were apparently willing to go to pretty extreme lengths to make Coogler happy on Sinners. Let me point out, that was a different regime. That was the AT&T regime that predated David Zaslav's current regime. They did a lot of stupid things. When you hire a phone company to run a motion picture studio, well, you get what you can expect. Coogler has said that he considers the ownership deal a one-off, rooted at least in part in Sinners' focus on themes of black artists' ownership of their own culture. Most of the hysteria surrounding it is essentially hand-wringing about what comes next. What happens if some other up-and-comer asks for the Ryan Coogler deal? Seems like you could just say, sure, show us the Ryan Coogler money, but we're not extremely skittish Hollywood execs. For now, it's mostly a look into the mindset of the Hollywood animal, where any film exists, not just for its own sake, but for how it can be milked in perpetuity. Meanwhile, we get some absolutely killer quotes out of the anxiety, including one unnamed studio type saying, look, here's the problem in Hollywood, okay? There's no rationale or logic behind absolutely anything. We'd always wondered. Well, the thing is, there is rationality behind. Now, it's because the people that are working in Hollywood don't know anything. And obviously, you go back to the William Goldman quote from his great book, Adventures in the Screen Trade, which I recommend everybody read, along with books like Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. They're a little dated in terms of like if you aren't up on your 80s, 70s, and 80s cinema, you're going to miss a lot of what Goldman was talking about. But the problem with Hollywood is, and it's been this way pretty much in the modern age, is no one is doing their job out of knowledge of what they're doing is good. Now, as much as I'm enjoying Seth Rogen's The Studio, it pretty much shows that the people running studios are the most dysfunctional people in the world. And in a way, that's kind of true, because everyone is working out of fear. Everyone is afraid to talk turkey. You know, and the problem is they don't actually know. It's not like the days of the olden times when you had studio heads that could make a decision. One man in one room could decide what they were going to make because that one man knew what they should make. Nowadays, they don't know what they're supposed to make. Look, no one ever gets rich following trends, and yet all anybody does now is look at analytics of trends. You know, if you look at all the great successes that Hollywood ever had, look at how The Godfather was made. They wanted to fire Francis Coppola every day. They didn't think they should have hired Al Pacino. They didn't like Marlon Brando. I mean, the people that are supposed to be in charge have always known a lot less than what was actually. There have been some people that do know, and I do think that Courtney Valenti and Sue Kroll over at Amazon, and I think Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi know. They've been in the business for a long time. Mike DeLuca came up at New Line. He was there. He started out as a young whippersnapper in the 80s. So he's come up in the studio system. These are not people that are dumb. They've seen trends come and go. But the problem is, do you know story and do you know the people that can pull it off? That's the real problem, is that the decision makers in Hollywood they're willing to spend $200 million on spreadsheet names and plug them in somewhere rather than take responsibility and go, you know what? Like Kevin Feige did when he hired James Gunn. James Gunn had made Slither and Super, and both of those movies were $3 million movies, but Kevin Feige was able to go, you know what? I think he found James Gunn that understood he was working within a system, but and Kevin Feige wanted him to do this. Kevin Feige gave James Gunn what he needed, but then surrounded him with the Marvel machine. But then James Gunn was able to work within that machine and bring you a trilogy of movies. And that was all because Kevin Feige said, we're hiring that guy. And he did the same thing with the Russo brothers when he brought him on to do Winter Soldier. Those were great moves. And they worked out because you had somebody at the top making those kinds of moves. And that's what we need more of in Hollywood. And also, don't spend $200 million. You know, IPs are no guarantee anymore. What is a guarantee is, look, the Barbenheimer phenomenon. Barbie and Oppenheimer both did the same thing that Sinners does. They provide you an experience. You can make fun of Barbie all you want, but if you're making a Barbie movie, you would be hard-pressed to make a better Barbie movie than what Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach wrote. That movie was way better, and it had a lot more to say, and it was a lot more fun than it had any right to be. And Oppenheimer was, again, an experience. Both of those movies provided wildly different experiences, but they became pop culture experiences. And you can talk about how people dressed up, but at the end of the day, if those movies did not provide a cinematic experience for their audiences, it wouldn't have worked. Oppenheimer didn't just make almost $1 billion because it rode in on Barbie's coattails. It was a film made by a master filmmaker who is a genre unto himself. And the thing is, the people in Hollywood need to understand, like Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi know they might have started slow, but you know what? They greenlit Minecraft. I know it was in development for a long time with other regimes, but Sinners was something they went to bat on. They went to bat on this, and I hope it works out for them. I think word of mouth is going to make this movie more successful than anybody thinks it's going to be. I don't know what they need to earn out. But I'd love to see this movie make half $500 million. I think that'd be a great result for everybody involved. From my mouth to God's ears, I'm sure. But I can see, I understand that it might not travel as well because the world's racist. But still, I think it's anybody who watches this movie is going to be provided an experience. And it's worth doing. And it's worth experiencing. And Warner Brothers, I hope, wins with this one. I really do. So, and I also think that these kinds of deals, while they might be dangerous, look, there are very few filmmakers that are coming off 2 movies that made $2 billion collectively and started another franchise that bolstered another IP with Creed. There's very unique filmmakers like what Ryan Coogler and his wife and his business partners at Proximity have done. So this is not something that's going to happen a lot. However, I've never understood why Hollywood has not been a more incentivized business. And I'll tell you something, the creative accounting that's going on, that needs to end as well. Why not be just more fair and equitable when it comes to making films and getting paid and paying people what they're worth and also keeping costs down? I think what they proved, I think what Coogler and his team proved is that they know how to make movies. I think a lot of people don't know how to make movies. And you saw Ryan Coogler come from an indie background, going to film school, meeting his friends, meeting his wife, working together, coming up, going from Fruitvale Station to Creed, which was a huge risk. Balls of steel with Ryan Coogler going to Sly and getting that movie made. And then what did Kevin Feige see in what he did in Black Panther? Sure, you could be cynical and you could say, well, we had to have a black director making Black Panther, which is true. But you found somebody that went in and took an IP already and showed what he could do with it, how he could take an IP that had been around literally for decades and change it and inject new life into it, direct actors, give you great performances. Michael B. Jordan continuing to work with him, bringing him along for the ride, making him Killmonger. This is the kind of thing that people should be doing. This is how Hollywood should be working. We've got other people. Zach Kreger coming up, Wait Till We See Weapons. He made Barbarian. He wrote another science fiction script that's fucking bonkers, and I hope somebody makes it. That was a script, man. I got to tell you, I'm not going to tell you much about it other than it's a science fiction script. I've read a lot of scripts in my life, but I have to tell you, this science fiction script that Zach wrote, our boy Zach, I literally had to put it down and go, holy shit. I'm beyond surprising. He surprised me. So he's a filmmaker that I think in August, when Weapons comes out, everybody should be running to that theater to see Weapons. I know the studio made not a Ryan Coogler deal, but they made a healthy deal for Zach to come on board, to come over to Warner Brothers. They're building a stable of filmmakers there that are going to continue to deliver. So we'll see what happens. Let's see what people are saying. First of all, let me just go and check. Where was I? Apocalypse Cow said, Rob, you said Sinners is pretty much a masterpiece on the John Campea show. What other MPs at this scale are at the same level for you? Great shows today. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. When I talk about movies, and I always have to explain this. I look at movies at scale. So to me, there are levels. Like, I think The Godfather is a masterpiece. I think Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece. I think All About Eve is a masterpiece. I think Sunset Boulevard is a masterpiece. I think Double Indemnity is a masterpiece. But I would not compare All About Eve to Apocalypse Now. I just wouldn't. They're not in the same league. I think Amelie is a masterpiece, to be honest. Alien, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But they're within, I think that, like our friend Paul Brunato says that he had problems with the script in, you could say that Apocalypse Now, you have problems with the script in Apocalypse Now because they had to cobble together the ending. Because Marlon Brando didn't know his lines. But I don't think that takes away from Apocalypse Now being a masterpiece. You watch it today and you're like, that movie could never get made today. Sinners, I would say, in its evocation of the period and its use of music, some people might say some of it's a bit heavy-handed. Do I think it's a perfect movie? I don't. A perfect movie, that's a hard... But I think for what it is and the experience that it provides, it is a great, great, great piece of cinema. But I don't know if there's anything that it compares to. People could say that, well, there's a little bit of Walter Hill's Crossroads in there, and, sure. You could say that, but there's a lot going on in that film. There's a lot of layers to peel back in Sinners. And I think that, you could talk about it like a vampire movie. There's people going, well, it's not even my favorite vampire movie. I'm like, well, this movie isn't just a vampire movie. It has so much to say about the race relations in the 30s, and like I was reading a story about how I did not know that there were a lot of Chinese immigrants actually Ruth Carter was telling me this, in like Mississippi in the 30s, and they were predominantly Christian. Like, there's so much going on in Sinners that you could watch it just as a movie, but I think it's going to be something people return to again and again and again. So from that sense, what I want an experience that sticks with me. I want to go see Sinners a bunch more times. That's what I want out of films. And I don't know if I would compare and contrast anything to Sinners, believe it or not. I mean, you could talk about, well, there's like Near Dark, there's The Hunger, there's, From Dusk Till Dawn. And sure, there From Dusk Till Dawn, you could say like there's certain elements that are similar in those movies, just like there are certain elements. Like if someone said, okay, Rob, you have to rate Fright Night, The Hunger, Near Dark, and Vamp. I mean, they're all vampire movies, but I would say that they're all totally different. That's like saying, well, which cop movies are the same? Is Serpico better than, I don't know, One Good Cop? I mean, they're both about cops. And just like there's different kinds of superhero movies. It's hard to say, but it's an interesting question. Castle Grace Skull says, happy birthday, happy Passover, and happy Easter. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. B Things says, a movie needs a point of view. I don't mean political, though it can be. I mean having an authentic and narrative POV that makes me want to care. I totally agree. Castle Grayskull also gifted a Burnettwork membership. DUI Champ says, I finished a novel about my circulation misadventures in Wilkes Barre's newspaper, War. It's Fear and Loathing meets Heart of Darkness, and it's viciously anti-MAGA. Any publishing agent advice? I am not the guy to ask about that, but I think the book sounds interesting. I bet that's really interesting. I like that idea. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, that sounds like a great book. It sounds like it's got a great point of view. I'd read it. Thomas Logan, our friend Thomas Logan says, went into Sinners expecting a fun popcorn film. The last thing I was expecting was a profound statement on the generational plight of conquered tribes. Yes, there are many different conquered tribes in Sinners. And again, that's why the film is so rich. There's so much woven into it that it isn't just any kind of a movie. MTH says, did you finish RLM's Star Trek The Motion Picture review? Thoughts? I did. I mean, I tend to be in agreement with them. I mean, it's nice that they went back and did it, but there was nothing in it that was surprising to me. I mean, I agree with all those things. I have loved Star Trek The Motion Picture since I first saw it, deeply flawed though it may be. It's a lot less flawed, but I do think that there are things in it that they should have gone a little further and fixed them. But the team fixing it did the best job they could. They were They did a fantastic job. But their fandom got in the way, in my opinion. And I've told Darren this. Their fandom got in the way of them truly making it the masterpiece that it deserves to be. Even though it's, a lot of people will say it's always going to be deeply flawed. B Thing says, off topic-ish. I was just listening to the soundtrack to Star Trek 4. I'm sorry. And it struck me how Star Trek from 2009 and beyond has just been so painfully devoid of joy, as well as hope and principles. Oh, yeah. No, I think that my opinions on Star Trek from 2009 on are well known. I don't think the people that are... Look, J.J. Abrams said he didn't like Star Trek. And while I think, Mr. Lin tried, he was working under the auspices of Bad Robot. And, of course, Secret Hideout doesn't know what to do with Star Trek. Mike McMahon made a fun show in Lower Decks, but, again, it's a show that was a farce as opposed to being... And they had some storylines that were pretty good. And Strange New Worlds is just, to me, it's an abomination the same way that Discovery is an abomination, but it's a much more palatable, it's a delicious abomination, so people like it because they've been bamboozled into liking it. But, Anson Mount's a great Captain Pike. But, when you're writing Star Trek with an autistic version or a neurodivergent version of Mr. Spock, it shows you have a complete misunderstanding of what the show's actually about or that character's about. So, unfortunately. So that's, Thomas Logan says, Sinners will be up for Best Picture. It won't win, nor do I think Coogler gets nominated. Jack O'Connell could easily get a nod for supporting actor. He was great, You got to love Jack O'Connell. He was great. I don't know. I think it might get a nomination. I think Ryan Coogler could get a nomination for writing or directing. It really depends what the rest of the year holds, it's hard to say. Mr. H says, or MTH says, Rob, are you familiar with RLM's commentary, Red Letter Media, by the way, commentary tracks on the Bandcamp app? They have commentaries on Jurassic Park, Terminator, and Alien, to name a few. No, I did not know that. I mean, I think they do a great job. I mean, I don't tend to list. There's so many commentaries now that are available on discs that I buy that I want to listen to. I find fan commentaries to be, as much as I love the Red Letter Media guys, I find fan commentaries to be a little tedious. Not that they can't be good. There's a lot of people like Tim Lucas, for instance, who published Video Watchdog. He does these encyclopedic commentaries. Max Allan Collins does good commentaries. But again, he's a professional writer. He does them with Heath from Serial at Midnight. But I think that I'm a fan. So when I'm listening to other fans opine about movies, I'm kind of like, okay, I mean, I do like watching reaction videos from younger people that weren't around or are rediscovering movies that are 30 years old for the first time. I do like that. There's this audio producer, this kid, he's in his early 20s, listening to like Pink Floyd and he was listening to the Beach Boys and the Beatles for the first time. And it's just funny watching people react going, wow, this is really amazing. It's really good. And I want to be like, how did you go into music producing and not already listen to this stuff? I mean, it set the tone. Things like the production, George Martin's production of Sgt. Pepper and all that. This isn't like, this isn't hidden from anyone. So, but yeah. Remix brilliantly sold as the villain in the trailers, but in reality, he's just another victim of oppression and invasion who misses his long dead kinsman. Yeah. I mean, but that's another thing. That's another thing about the vampire mythology. One of my favorite things in Near Dark is when Jesse gets asked, when Lance Hendrickson gets asked how old he is. And Lance Hendrickson's answer was, I fought for the South. We lost. It was great. But that's what makes a great vampire tale. But anyway, I think I will end this stream today. I'm going to try and do more, like get back to the everyday streams, because I miss you guys. But look, I'm really excited about the direction Hollywood is going in, especially after going to CinemaCon and seeing the fruits of the labor, not the fruit veil roots of the labor of Ryan Coogler and his team. But it's this kind of thing that I think Hollywood needs more of. And I'm excited to see it happening. And I'm excited to see people chattering about movies online that they love, rather than bitching and moaning and complaining about a Silver Surfer that's not from our universe anyway. You know that universe is going out. So who cares if Shia LaBeouf's that Silver Surfer? It's such a weird thing. I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four. I'm looking forward to Superman. I'm looking forward to Thunderbolts. What's not to look forward to, you know? I think we're getting some good stuff. And if it sucks, then we can complain all we want about it. But why complain about something we haven't seen yet? I was really excited for Sinners. It certainly delivered the goods. And I'm glad that the movie has such good word of mouth. And more than anything, look at you guys in the chat right now. People are excited about Sinners. People are talking. A movie is exciting people and getting people to chat and talk about it. Like not that people are going into offices like they used to, but this is what I was used to growing up. My friends and I would go see a movie. We'd be so galvanized by what we saw. We'd chatter about it all week and probably go see it again. And it's great to see that that's happening right now with a movie like Sinners. And it's happened few and far between. I mean, I this year I really loved, like I said, I really loved Companion. But I loved it at scale. You know, I wouldn't compare Companion to Sinners. But I think it's really, really good. When I saw The Terminator for the first time in 1984, you could tell that the guy who made that, who was that James Cameron fellow anyway? But he certainly knew how to make a movie, and he certainly knew how to make, like, when we would go see films, it's hard to explain to people, but like I would anticipate Escape from New York as much as I would anticipate Infinity War or Endgame. It was a new John Carpenter movie. New York City was a walled maximum security prison. Breaking out is impossible. Breaking in is insane. I mean, you'd get excited. You wouldn't think about how much a movie cost. You wouldn't think about whether it's part of an IP. It would just be cool and you'd go see it. I mean, Conan was a big Universal movie, but and it delivered. But it wasn't like, you know, when you went and saw Conan, I was not anticipating Conan more than I was anticipating Escape from New York, which came out a year earlier. You know, to me, it was all part of the same continuum. I would see low-budget movies, high-budget movies, foreign movies, whatever. I would just love movies, and I would judge them on their own merits. And, you know, I like seeing that feeling, even though it's been fleeting in my adult life. I like to see it coming back. I like to see people excited, raring to go. Like, you know, when you see one movie that excites you, you want to go back and see another. We got Thunderbolts coming out. I'm hoping that that's a return to form for the MCU, because it's been bumming me out since the end of Endgame that I haven't loved the Marvel Cinematic Universe as much as I want to. I want them to succeed. And just seeing Galactus's foot in New York City does not excite me. You got to show me more. Or as Kirsten Dunst said in Interview with the Vampire, I want more. So give it to me. On that note, let's see. I think I'm all caught up. I want to say thank you to everybody who generously supports this channel via Super Chats and tips and members. And we're going to have a member call next week. And if you're interested in my own work, my own audio drama, you know, I can't just talk mad shit about other people's stories without producing my own. True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, which is based on Max Allan Collins' first of 19 novels about young, newly minted detective Nathan Heller amidst the Chicago mobs of the early 30s, the Depression era, the end of Prohibition, Elliot Ness. It's almost, you know, in a way, if you like The Untouchables, and if you like Road to Perdition, which was also based on Max Allan Collins' work, I think you'll like True Noir. You can go get the entire audio drama, all 10 episodes right now at truenoir.co. It'll soon be available once we get all the kinks out in one long form. But right now, you can go subscribe to it at truenoir.co. And I directed it and produced it, edited it, along with my compatriots, because I have a team now, kind of like Ryan Coogler does, and our team is a good team. So go check it out, and then you'll probably want to go read all of Max's Nathan Heller books, and there's 19 of them, and they go all the way from 1932 to the end of the 60s. So you got your work cut out for you. But anyway, check it out. That's my work, if I can promote my own work, and hopefully you'll be able to see White Devils in a theater near you. Now remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, have a better night. And tomorrow, Happy Easter.